So, welcome to this Flow360 online training webinar. Today we are going to be looking at the whole business of collaboration. How do you share information? How do you ensure that everybody is up to date with progress and how things are right now? We're going to be covering user types first of all, then a look at site personnel and that important setup that covers manager and surveyor responsibilities. We're then going to have a look at employees and staff, particular internal teams and team sharing setups to ensure that you understand what the different options are that are available on the team setups. We will have a look at liaising with external contractors and service providers, and that will include a look at remits for work types, geographical region, cost basis of works undertaken, and so on. And all of the above affect and control access to both incoming issues and outgoing works orders and inquiries. A key part of collaboration generally and sharing information is, of course, to do with documentation. So we're also going to have a look at the document setup. There are some preferences on your individual user accounts that come into play here, and we'll also look at the options for sharing documents and making those documents transparently available to your colleagues. Then we're going to look at the key document settings, those controls that govern when and where a document is automatically added to an incoming issue or service request, and indeed when and where documents are automatically added to outgoing works instructions and inquiries. So let's get going. The user types in Flow360, just a quick review of those. The owner admin level and the owner staff level really very much view only. They don't do very much, but they can of course access full information as to what is going on. The client admin level is a key management responsibility level, and they have the capability to give managers their responsibilities. And when we look at the personnel tab in a minute, the setup for managers on the personnel tab principally is controlled by that client admin level. So then we come down to the manager level, and as many of you will know, there are of course a number of different options in Flow360 for managers to have a whole raft of different and individual responsibilities and capabilities. And as I've already said, the client admin is responsible for setting up some of those initially, but beyond that point, the primary manager on any site also has the capability to tweak and adjust the responsibilities of other managers who operate across the site, and also to tweak and adjust the responsibilities of surveyors, that is, those people who have some capability to add information or feed in scheduled tasks following a condition survey of some sort, and so on. So as the manager level, surveyors we've just covered, we come down then to the service provider level, a key part of the operational side of Flow360, and this includes both your internal workforce, the team setups that we'll have a look at, and of course external contractors and service providers that you might be inviting to share your information in Flow360, or you will inevitably be sending works orders and inquiries to them. And then we come down to the general staff level, that is users who will be adding new issues to Flow360, but otherwise have no management capability within the solution. There is, as most of you will know, also an enhanced version of the general user, which is a general admin user. And this is typically used as a user account to give someone a wider view of issues that are incoming and activity that's ongoing in the parts of the site where they have some responsibility or interest. So I'm currently logged in as a manager, and I'm going to start by going to my sites, and we're going to drill to the King's College site and have a look at that all-important Personnel tab. Now, by default, when I click on the Personnel tab, the first sub-tab that shows is the Managers sub-tab, and here we see listed all of the individual managers who have some responsibilities across the King's College site. I should point out at this point that the Personnel tab is site-specific, so you can have a completely different setup and allocation of manager responsibilities from one site to the next, say in case of schools, from the senior school to perhaps the prep school or the nursery, different manager setup, whatever is appropriate. And of course you can just mirror the manager setup or even group sites together and say we just simply have a manager set up across the entire group. So let's have a look at the controls that we have available on the Manager tab here for King's College. And I'm going to follow the green line. The green line is always the primary manager, so whoever has a tick in the column under the P will be showing in green. Their line will be showing in green. If I hover over that with my mouse, you can see this is an enabling control. It indicates that this manager is the default primary manager. Primary manager, key level of responsibility, can also set up responsibilities for other managers and is always the fallback. So for an incoming issue or service request where there is no specified manager for that service area or no appropriate manager can be located within the setup for Flow360, the primary manager is then always the fallback and the issue or notification will go to the primary manager instead. The following columns, I'm going to skip over a couple and we'll come back to those. So I'm going to skip across to the H column. The H column is for the primary help desk manager. This is separate from the primary manager and is the key help desk manager for premises issues and is also the default fallback where there's one specified if there's no specific service area manager. Say someone logs a catering request, a catering service request, and there is no catering manager set up on this Personnel tab, then the primary help desk manager is the first fallback and they will get the notification of the request. And as we've already said, if there's no primary help desk manager in the H column, then the primary manager in the P column will be the ultimate fallback. The BK is for bookings, and in this case this is again an enabling control that specifies that in this case Simon Davis is the bookings manager at King's College. So when staff make requests for new bookings for rooms or resources, those requests go through to Simon. Next to that we have the column with a V, and this is the vehicle bookings manager, which can be separate to the general room and resource booking. Then we come on to the IT services manager, and that generally of course is used for fielding all of those incoming service requests and actions required of IT support. Then we move across to catering, and HK is housekeeping, CL is cleaning, GEN is the general services, typically that would include portering, and GR is grounds. So this little set here from H through to GR, these are all the individual service area managers. I'm going to come back just to these two extra controls here that we skipped over in the first place. The O column, this is a restriction. And if you put a tick in that column, that immediately means that that manager has overview capability only of what area they have some responsibility for, and they can only see what is going on. They cannot make change. So it's not someone who's involved in day-to-day operational matters, but someone who needs to have access to see what's going on. Sometimes the overview only control is a useful one just to be able to turn on. The Q column is again an enabling one and allows that specified manager to have access, if we pop the tooltip up again, to have access to basic employee and employee qualifications records, and this includes team setups. So for someone who has responsibility for setting up teams and needs access to employee information in regard to team setups, then the Q column is important. And that is supplemented by the F column at the end. And this indicates full manager access. If that is set along with the Q column, that also enables the manager to have full access to those employee employment contracts and be able to get at those contracts and make changes and adjust start and end dates and other detailed contractual information, including things like hourly rates, salary, and so on, in order that Flow360 can calculate in-house and external costs in relation to work that's undertaken. And finally, the pound sign column here on the end indicates full budget setting clearance for this particular manager. That would give the manager access to cost center and account information, allow the manager to allocate cost center and account codes against incoming issues and outgoing works orders and so on. So that concludes our look at the Managers tab on the Personnel tab for King's College. We are now just going to have a quick look at the Surveyors tab, where we can see the individual surveyors listed and some controls here, as on the Managers tab, some controls that allow you to govern how individual surveyors can operate within Flow360. The P column, as for the Managers tab, is the one that indicates the primary surveyor in this case, and the O column similarly is an oversight only column, so it would give that person normal surveyor level access to Flow360 and to your data, but in an overview capability only. They can't actually do anything other than review information and pull off reports. Then we get some controls. So the plus R means this surveyor is allowed to add resources. They can add things to rooms, they can even add rooms and buildings to your site. The plus T column indicates that the surveyor can add scheduled tasks or other programmed actions to your plan of action, your PPM, moving forward. The F column and the pound sign column work in exactly the same way as they do on the Managers tab. They give the surveyor full access to all activity across the site if the F column is ticked, and the pound column indicates that they have some capability in terms of allocating new programmed activity to specified budgets and account codes. So again, the Personnel tab with the Managers and the Surveyors sub-tabs are key parts of how you set up Flow360 on your site and allow you to control very simply which managers can do what. And of course you can switch those capabilities and switch the responsibilities very easily in order to cover absences or times when the primary or key person for that service area is not going to be available, and you simply need to switch that responsibility over to somebody else. You add them as a new manager or as a new surveyor, and you put the ticks in the appropriate column for that person. We're now going to move on to look at team setups and some of the controls that you have on the team setup side that govern how teams work, particularly in relation to the collaboration, how they can share access to issues, how you control who can self-select issues and what happens to issues when they first come in, and how the team then subsequently functions as a team. In order to get at the team setups as a manager, I need to go first to my manager homepage. So I click the little home button on my front screen and then select the manager option. On my manager home card, I have an employees tab, and underneath that a teams sub-tab. And we're going to have a little look at the maintenance team and look at the setup for that team. So when I click the button to look at the maintenance team record, the first thing I see are all of the individual team members, and what I'm really interested in right now is looking at the setup for this particular team. I can see over on the right hand side that the team is currently active and the date when the team was initially set up. Just as a sort of side note here, if you need to make a team inactive, you simply set an end date. So if I was to set the active to date to yesterday, for example, the team would no longer be active, and that would immediately restrict the things that they could do and immediately take them out of the automatic allocation of issues based on a particular remit, a particular work type remit being associated with a particular team. So on the Setup tab here, we can see first of all some global things. The team email address. It's not uncommon for all members of a particular team to have a shared email account, and for all notifications and requests to go through to that one central account so that they can all access that via email independently. There's also the opportunity here simply to log a team telephone number if that's appropriate, and to put in the standard working hours for the team. Now this of course can be supplemented on an individual employee's working contract record with the working hours that apply to them as an individual, but this is the global setting for the team. Now let's have a look at some of these controls. Shared access for most teams is generally left on. That means that all members of the team can see all issues that any member of the team is in charge of or has some responsibility for. You can restrict that in various ways. One way is you set the visibility only tag on, and that doesn't restrict the access, but it means that they can no longer self-select. This current setup that we have here would allow incoming issues that are not assigned to an individual to simply be self-selected by any member of the team, except that initially we've got things assigned to the lead. So a new issue that is logged on the system by someone else and assigned to the maintenance team will initially be assigned to Tim Jones, who is the designated lead on this team. If I don't want that to happen, if I just want the issue to be assigned generally to the team and to allow any member of the team to self-select, then I can uncheck that tick box there. And that's exactly now what will happen. A new incoming issue that's assigned to the maintenance team will be visible to all members of the team on their new issues list, and any member of the team can click through to any issue and self-select, basically put themselves in charge. So if you want them to go to the lead initially, rather than simply allowing them open access assigned to the team, then click the tick box that says initially assigned to primary lead. So the visibility only one will restrict the self-accept options for all team members. Hide shared unless filtered is a useful setting. It means that when a team member logs on to Flow360 for the first time and they look at the help desk issues list, initially they will only see those issues that are directly assigned to them. They don't want to see necessarily every time they log in all of the issues that are unassigned or assigned to other people. But the hide shared unless filtered means that they'll be hidden initially, but they can use the filters to find issues that are generally active amongst the team or that have been assigned to other individual members on the team. The last one down here, all team members can manage all issues, does need to be used with some care. Typically this tends to be used for IT or ICT support teams and generally not used very much by other teams, although catering or grounds perhaps are other examples of teams where that might be used. It does mean that any member of the team, if you've got this option checked, any member of the team can fully manage any issue that's been assigned to the team, effectively acting as if they are a manager for that issue. And they can reassign it to other people, they can take responsibility for it themselves, they can close it and indicate the work has been completed. They can even possibly send it off-site as an external works order to an outside contractor or service provider if that particular service or issue cannot be handled internally. So it does say on that one, the little tooltip does say at the end, use with care. You need to think a little bit carefully about exactly how your team needs to operate if you want to set that one on. But the option is there if you need it. There's a second set of controls here over on the right hand side. The hide assigned simply means that once an issue has been assigned to another member of the team, then it's hidden from everyone else on the team. And sometimes that's a useful thing to do. So it completely hides it and makes it not available once it's been assigned to somebody else. The help desk issues proxy, if checked, means that any member of the team can put a new issue or service request in Flow360 on behalf of any other member of staff, and they will actually be able to select the members of staff from the drop down, the caller name when they're logging a new issue, and assign an incoming issue to any member of staff. This can be useful. Those issues that come in via conversations in the corridor, or someone just says, can you put an issue on the system for me in relation to this? That option, which is always available to managers incidentally, you can extend that option to members of an individual team if you want to. Target any team member directly simply means that when a new help desk issue is being recorded or reported by a member of staff and they have access to the drop down that says where this issue is going to be targeted, then that would allow any member of the team to be targeted individually and directly. That option generally is not available. The option to select the target for an incoming issue is generally handled automatically. So in many situations that's simply a redundant control that's not required. Use the member work type remits. If that is checked and you have a number of members on a team and each of those individuals has a different set of remits, so one of them, say, is an electrician, another is a joiner, another is a general builder, and so on, then by ticking the box that says use member work type remits, the individual remits that show up on the next tab, help desk work type remits, will be a collection of all of those remits that apply to each of those individuals on the team. If that is unchecked, as it is at the moment, then on the help desk work type remits, you can set up specified remits that simply apply to the team globally. So you have the option there. If we come back here and I set that to use the member work type remits and we go back to the remits tab, we can then see the different remits that have been set for the different individual members on the team. So some of them have global help desk issue remits, others have specified particular work type remits. So up to you again as to how you want the team to operate and which types of issues are targeted against that team, because that's where those remits come into play. So if we go back to the help desk work type remits here and we look, Edward Lee as a member of the team has painting and decorating as one of his remits. If a new issue comes in that's flagged as painting and decorating and your issues are set to be targeted automatically based on that specified work type, then the maintenance team in this instance would be a target for receiving that particular service request. Coming back to these last two controls on the right hand side for the team setup, log team work types only. If that is checked, then team members can only log new help desk issues of work types that match those remits that we've just been looking at. So it's a restriction. It means they can't put other issues on the system that relate to other areas. They can only put issues on that relate to their own individual areas of remit. Finally, team members see all other team members' outgoing issues. Very rarely used, I would say, but it is a useful option in some situations. I give you an example where you have an ICT support team who are involved in events management and who need to be able to see if another member of the team has already put in a request, say, for the catering requirement for that particular event. So in that case, it's not an issue that is going to be targeted at the ICT support team. It will go to the catering team and therefore normally wouldn't be visible to the IT team. If this is checked, that allows all members of the IT team or the ICT team to see any issue that's been logged on the system by any other member of the team, regardless of the issue or service request type. So again, hopefully you can see from that slightly convoluted explanation, it's not commonly used, but it is a useful setting as and when it's required. Whilst we're on this Setup tab, I want to draw your attention just to the fact that 4 items here and 1 item here are asterisked. And the asterisk setting here is explained. Settings also apply to source teams linked to this team on the Linked Teams tab. Now, Linked Teams is a way in which you can link one support team to another in order to make issues assigned to either team visible and available to both teams. And the controls that you set here on the linked to team will affect the operational day-to-day operations of a source team that is then linked to the maintenance team. So again, that probably needs a little bit of experimenting in order to get the setup exactly the way you want it. But in essence, you can link teams together on here on the Linked Team tab. There are no teams linked to the maintenance team at the moment, but in order to add a new one, we would simply click the little plus button here over on the right, select a new team and link the two together. And that allows teams to interoperate, to collaborate further, and to share access to issues that both teams need to have accessible to them. So that's the team setup. We've had a little look in that part of the webinar at the whole question of remits, and I just want to take you through remits more generally. I'm going to go back to my start screen, and then as a manager I'm going to go back to my manager home, and I want to look at service providers. So I've got a tab here that says providers, and this is basically all service providers that are on the system that I have some sort of working relationship with. And we see here Steve Pedder's Prime Maintenance. I want to look at Steve's contact record, because on his contact record I can see a tab that says remits. Now the remits tab will only show for people who have manager level responsibility or higher, and where the contact that they're looking at is a registered service provider within Flow360. That is, they have a tick in this box here that says they are a service provider, and that is set automatically when they are given a service provider user account, which of course you can in some situations set up yourself as a direct request, an instant access account. So the remits tab gives you 3 sub-tabs. There's one that's geo remits, and this is for regions, in this case counties, of the UK that this particular service provider will operate across for you. The little plus button here, if there's a tick in a plus button, basically means they can operate anywhere that you have a site. So very often that's all you would do is check that one. But if you wanted to specify that you have a number of sites across the country and that some of your service providers will only work within certain geographical regions, then you can specify the counties that they cover on the Geo Remits tab. The Work Remits tab identifies those specific work types that this particular contractor or service provider undertakes on your behalf. And it comes into effect when issues are automatically targeted, incoming work types are automatically targeted based on those remits. We've already had a look at the team setups and the remits on the team setups tab. So this is where those remits are set up for each of the individual members of the team. So if Steve is on a team and the team setup says use the individual team members' remits as the team remits, then brickwork and blockwork, electrical, joinery, painting and decorating, these are all remits specifically set for Steve. They will be available as remits that apply to any team that Steve is part of. So that's the work type remits, the work remits. Again, very easy to add. You just click the little plus button here. In this case, we need to confirm the client and then specify the site and then specify the specific work type that applies. Or if it's a catch-all, we can simply say absolutely everything. Steve can do anything for us. That's a useful shortcut. Separately, we can say all help desk issues, so we can identify the fact that Steve can receive any help desk issue regardless of work type, and that he is available for any other type of work if we click this one. But if we want to be specific, supposing Steve was an electrician and all he did was electrical work, then we would come down here and select electrical, possibly adding electrical advanced as another option. So those are the work remits. Let's just have a little look at cost remits as well. The cost remit controls here govern things like minimum and maximum cost range for works orders. So this is outgoing works instructions that you send to this particular service provider or contractor. You've put together, for example, a set of line items that are going to go onto a works order, and the total value of that works order is calculated at the time that the order is issued. If in this case it exceeds $500,000 in value, then Steve and Prime Maintenance would no longer be a possible target to receive that works order, because their working remit in terms of costs goes from 0 to $500,000 only, and for larger contracts it would have to go to somebody else. The cost plus setup here would allow this particular service provider, if it's set to yes, cost plus allows them to respond to inquiries and tender inquiries that you send to them by including things like overhead, profit elements and prelims on their returned rates to you. That can be very advantageous, because that means that the rate that you store in the system from that particular service provider for that particular activity has all of those elements in it as well. So we're not just talking about a base rate to undertake the work, we're including costs that are a much truer reflection of likely final cost than just a base rate based on, say, square meterage or number of units would give us. The flexi contract control allows that service provider in this case to make adjustments, line item adjustments, to add in new options on a works order, to substitute items, or even to drop items off an order as they see fit. So it's giving quite a high level of control to a contractor, and for your main contractors that's likely to be entirely appropriate. For your individual smaller contractors, or maybe even for your internal workforce, it's likely you will leave that set to no. Self sign-off, another important control here for the individual service provider or contractor, and also of course applies internally to each individual member of your internal workforce. Self sign-off means, if it's set to yes, that when you issue someone with a works order and they click the button to say it's all done, that completely signs it off all in one go. So it indicates that the work is finished and signs it off. If self sign-off is set to no, there will then be a two-stage sign-off required, i.e. the contractor indicates first of all that they've completed work, and then a message goes through to the relevant manager or surveyor to that effect, saying that the contractor has indicated work is completed and the manager or surveyor needs to finally inspect and finally do that second stage sign-off in order to completely sign off the work. So self-sign-off, flexi-contract, cost plus, and those cost ranges are all important parts of the working remit that describe how this particular contractor or service provider operates on your site for work that you give them. Finally, in this session, we are going to have a look at the all-important area of documents and document sharing. And the first thing I'm going to do is jump back to the start and go to my personal preferences, just to look at a couple of settings there that are pertinent in relation to document sharing and collaboration. First of all, I've got an option here at the top of my preferences set up, default view access for documents that I upload. Now this is the setting that will be applied automatically to any document that you upload to Flow360, no matter what it's connected to, with the specific exception of documents that are linked to incident reports, which are always more restricted. So in this case we have the choice of private, That simply means you are the only person who will ever see that document in Flow360. It will not be listed or available as an option to anybody else. The client group is a set of people that includes the owners of sites and the client admin, client staff level only. It excludes managers and surveyors. So it is top level only, and for some documents, when you're uploading a batch of documents that you want to restrict to that group, then setting your preference to client group is a quick and easy way of doing that. The site group is everybody who's in the client group plus managers and surveyors. So all of those people who are specified on the personnel tab that we looked at earlier, all of those managers and surveyors will also have access to this document if I upload it and set the view access to site group. Services group is a bit of a broader one to get your head around. The services group includes everybody in the other two groups, so it's all of the client group, all of the site group, and includes all members of staff. So that's employees, general members of staff on your site, members of the internal team, internal service areas, and all outside contractors and service providers, on the understanding that a document has been linked to a works instruction or inquiry that you have sent to them. So it's very broad, and it is the level of access that's appropriate for documents that you need to flag as key documents, important bits of information that are going to be automatically linked to incoming issues or automatically attached to outgoing works orders and instructions or inquiries. And the final option here you have is list. And the list is that by default, any document you add will be set to list, and you would then have to specify what that list contains in terms of names. Generally, it's not a particularly useful one to set as your preference unless you know you're going to be adding a whole set of documents that you need then to individually restrict to specified named individuals only. Worth remembering, of course, at this stage that any document that you do upload, you become the owner of that document. You can transfer that ownership to somebody else if you want to, and you can make it shared ownership as well. But as the owner, you can, of course, change this view access setting on the individual document record for each document as you see fit. You have control of that. So this setting in your preferences is really just the general, this is what happens when I upload a new document. There's one other little set of controls in here under docs sharing that you see on your preferences setup. And the docs sharing tab essentially allows you to specify other named individuals who automatically have access to any document you upload, so any document that you are the owner of, regardless of this setting up here. So it operates in addition to the general setting up here. And in this case, I've got John Jones and Janet Williams added as docs sharing collaborators. And I have some controls here, V, C, and O. V is view only. So Janet will be able to see any document that I upload, no matter what the general view access setting is for that document, but she can only view them. She can't do anything else. John, on the other hand, is also set up as a collaborator. Collaborators on documents are very useful for shared maintenance of documents. A useful example always is something like an asbestos register that is actually maintained maybe by 2 or 3 people rather than one. And having those 2 or 3 people specified as collaborators on the documents means that any one of those can upload a new version and make changes to the documents that are stored in Flow360. The final option, the O column, is owner level, and that basically would specify that that named individual has complete shared ownership, i.e. they can do anything with the document that I, as the owner of the document, can do. So some additional controls there that are useful if you're working in an environment with other people where you are finding you continually uploading documents that you need each other to be able to look at. automatically without that having to be specified separately for each document as it's uploaded. So the Docs Sharing tab, useful addition here in your preferences. Let's go now to the documents library. In fact, let's find an asbestos document and just have a look at some of the sharing and key document setups that are available for an individual document. So now looking at the record for the document itself, we can see it's a Word file. View access currently set to services group, and I can see I'm logged in as Tim at the owner, so I'm currently the owner. If I need to change the ownership, I can do that by clicking this button and selecting a different person from my contacts to be the new owner for this particular document. So currently it's set to services group. There is also an access list set up, but it currently only has my name on it, so that's fine. If I look at collaborators, there's just me. If I look at shared, however, note that John Jones and Janet Williams, who were added on my preferences as colleagues who could share documents that I upload, they are listed as shared with shared access to this particular document. So John has the same controls that were visible when we looked on the preferences record, and that's in relation now to this specific document. Now let's move across here to the key document setups here on the document record, because this is a really important part of the whole collaboration and sharing of information that goes on, much of it automatically in Flow360 as incoming issues are logged on the system and works instructions and orders are sent off-site and responded to by contractors or service providers. The key doc setting flag basically indicates that this document is important information that will automatically be attached to outgoing works orders that relate to individual resources or parts of the site that this asbestos register document has been linked to. So if the asbestos register document in this case relates to a particular room location and a works order is issued for works to be undertaken in that room, then in that situation this particular asbestos register document would be automatically attached to any outgoing works order. And that cannot be deleted. You can't remove the link, and it is permanently recorded. So the key doc flag relates to outgoing works orders. In this case, the help desk flag, help desk, is also ticked, and that means that this document will also be automatically linked to incoming help desk fault reports, service requests that relate to locations or objects that the document is linked to. So again, if this document is linked to a room and someone logs a fault report or registers some sort of issue with that room location and the help desk flag is set here as well, then this document will be automatically linked to that new incoming issue. And we can be a little bit more specific about that as well. We can extend that into individual service areas here and then choose which types of services this document would apply to. Now, an example here might be a pre-vehicle booking checklist, for instance, in which case we can have a document that is that checklist, and we can say this applies to vehicle booking services only, so it becomes a key document, but only for vehicle booking services. And then when someone puts a new vehicle bookings request on the system, that pre-bookings checklist will automatically be linked through to that particular request. And the last option we have here is a signed option. If that is set on any document and the document is then linked to an incoming issue or service request, the person who is dealing with that incoming issue or service request will have to indicate by ticking a box to confirm that they have read and understood the contents of the attached document before proceeding with any action or any works relating to that issue. It also applies to documents that are sent off-site as attachments with works orders and instructions. The service provider or contractor will have to indicate that they have read the document and they've understood its contents before they can confirm, complete and sign off any action or works that are included in the instruction. A very important part of the audit trail, the record keeping that goes on automatically in the background in Flow360 to ensure that you have a proper record of which information was communicated to whom and when, and did they confirm that they'd seen it. All of that is permanently stored as part of the history and audit trail and becomes very important. In terms of collaboration, and remember we have some collaborators on this particular document, I'll just draw your attention here to the version button at the top. The version button allows anyone who is either the document owner or in this case John Jones, who is also indicated here as a collaborator, to upload a new version of this document. So if the asbestos register has been amended and we need to put the new version in the system, then either I, Tim Jones, or John as a collaborator can upload a new version of that document, and that will automatically rebuild the links through the system to ensure that from that point on, new works orders and instructions or new incoming issues automatically have version 2 of the asbestos register linked to them rather than version 1. Version 1 would then be marked as superseded but remains of course active in the system because it has some history in that it will have been linked to issues and works orders that were recorded before version 2 of the asbestos register was uploaded. Back to the start, and that is where we are going to stop today on this session, looking at collaboration. We've had a look at the personnel setup on the Site tab, and we had a look at managers and key manager responsibilities. Let's look at the Managers tab. So Managers tab was here, and we also had the Surveyors tab and responsibilities for surveyors. We went through to the Manager home page in order to access employees and then teams and look at the specific setup for an individual team. And we discussed those options and looked at the remits and so on. We also looked at work remits more generally in relation to both internal and external workforce, and we've had a look now at some preferences in relation to collaboration regarding documents and sharing of key information and how that information is automatically linked and distributed. I do hope that has been useful and gives you a good insight to the various ways in which Flow360 enables you to collaborate with colleagues both on-site and off-site and share information seamlessly with them. Thank you for your time today.